Call to order. This meeting was advertised pursuant of New Jersey Open Public Meeting Acts, NJSA 10:4-6 through 10:4-21. Adequate notice was placed in the official publication for the Township of Monroe, i.e. South Jersey Times, Courier Post, and the Sentinel of Gloucester County. A copy of that notice is posted on the bulletin board at the municipal complex. Please note that the clerk has placed a sign-in sheet at the rear of the courtroom. If anyone would like to address council during the public portion, please sign in, raise your hand, and I will ask you to come forward to the microphone. Kindly state your name and address for the record. In addition, please note that audio and video of this meeting is being recorded in accordance with Ordinance 56-2024. A copy of this recording will be posted on the Township's website for the public to view at their convenience. Please all rise for the salute to the flag, led by Councilman Valentine, and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
As we gather here today as the leadership of Monroe Township, we pray that we are ever mindful of the responsibility we have to render service to our fellow citizens and to our community. Keeping in mind always the enduring values of life, exerting our efforts in those areas and on those things upon which future generations can build with confidence. Let us strive to continue to make Monroe Township a successful community and lead with truthfulness, trust, and good character for the residents of Monroe Township. Amen.
Amen. Roll call.
Council Vice President, Mrs. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Cope.
Here.
Mrs. Fox.
Here.
Council President, Mr. Heverly.
Here.
Mr. O'Reilly.
Here.
Mr. Rossi.
Here.
Mr. Valentine.
Here.
Mayor Wolf.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Kurz. Here. Solicitor, Mrs. Grace.
Here.
Business Administrator, Mr. Dehart.
Here.
Director of Code Enforcement, Mr. Sebastian.
Here.
Director of Community Affairs, Mrs. Park, is excused. Director of Parks and Recreation, Mr. Bruno, is excused. Director of Public Safety, Mr. Rumpf, is excused. Director of Public Works, Mr. Dilks, excused. Director of Real Estate, Ms. Posadsky, excused. Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Boyer.
Here.
Deputy Police Chief McBride. Here. And myself, Municipal Clerk Eileen Chiselko.
Moving on to presentations. We have one presentation tonight. It's Monroe Township Open Space Advisory Committee presentation for 2025 recommendations to council.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
Len Fritz, Open Space Advisory Committee meeting, Council President, Advisory Committee President, Chairman, whatever you want to call me. Anyhow, I hope you've all read the recommendations we have that were they completed in your packet, I believe? No? Okay. Or do you want me to read all of it to put it into the record? No. Anybody have any questions regarding any of the comments or recommendations? Seeing none? Okay, great. I do want to thank the council and all for moving ahead with the amphitheater perception, and hopefully that will pan out. We did do a little survey, as I mentioned in our report here. Kind of started at the Fall Festival in town, and we got quite a good turnout. About 51 people responded, so to me that's quite a bit compared to what people don't know about open space. But they had quite a few varying ideas of what to do with A, Owens Field, B, Mary Mazzig Duffy Park, and C, the park down on, I don't know if it's Olympic Fields now, or is it still Wagner Fields? It's Wagner still. Because I've seen a few maps now saying it's Olympic Field. It's like, what's going on there? Where'd that come from?
What did it say, Ray?
Some of the maps I've seen say Olympic Field.
Actually, I think that was even the older version before it was Wagner.
Maybe.
Is that,
I think so.
I'm pretty sure
That
that
makes
predates
sense, yeah.
when we called it, when we renamed
Joe
it Monroe
Joe
Wagner.
remembers.
Before they named it Wagner.
It was Olympic.
Wagner?
Cecil.
So that's all that done. Because I've had questions on which one are you talking about? I thank you for that input. All right, if there's no questions or anything, I guess my presentation is over. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ed.
Moving on to matters of discussion.
Yes, I believe there's only one item, which is in regard to a planning board member. There was an incident on or about January 28th where there was some sort of verbal and possible physical altercation as well involving a planning board member. Pursuant to our code 175-16, the terms of planning board members can be terminated for cause. So before you today is essentially an intent, a decision to be made on an intent letter to be sent to said planning board member in order to terminate his position and his seat with the planning board. So if, we could take a straw poll and then we can proceed to send out that letter with the intent to remove, at which point if they elect to have a public hearing, that would be scheduled for the February 26th council meeting, or else their effective removal would be the February 26th date, if no hearing is
Madam
presented.
Solicitor, do we need a motion from a council member and a second for that with a vote to?
Yeah, we could do it for the intent, yes.
Before we do that, for some of the newer members, can you articulate the process of what, I know you said it a little bit briefly, I'm familiar, this isn't the first time I've been, but I don't know if some of the other council members understand what the protocols are.
Sure. So again, the chapter is 175-16, and the relevant portion essentially states that any member other than a Class 1 member of the planning board, and a Class 1 member is an individual who serves in the absence of the mayor, so any other member other than that individual, after a public hearing, if he requests one, may be removed by the governing body for cause. Cause being any sort of physical altercation, any criminal convictions, any convictions of potential bribery or anything of the sorts that would also apply to, council members to have to forfeit their position. So again, right now what's before council is this intent to remove. This individual can seek a due process hearing, which can be scheduled upon their notification to myself and or council, at which point it will be conducted on February 26th, and then council can make the final determination as to the removal for that individual. So once again, the vote right now is going to be as to this draft letter that was sent to council separately. It's going to be amended slightly to just indicate that this is the intent to remove, and any due process hearing can again take place February 26th upon the request of the planning board member.
Motion to mail the letter.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, moving on to questions regarding resolutions scheduled this evening. Any questions regarding ordinances scheduled this evening? Approval of minutes? None. Correspondence? None. Motion to open public portion to resolutions scheduled?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Anyone wishing to speak for their own resolution scheduled this evening? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close public portion?
Motion to close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Motion to bracket resolutions R78-2025 through R98-2025.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motions to approve resolutions 78-2025 through resolutions 98-2025.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 99-2025, resolution appointing member to the Monroe Township Economic Development Commission. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
Mrs.
Nominations.
Mrs. Adams?
Yes, I nominate Fred Bueller.
Second.
Any other nominations? Mr. Cope?
No nominations.
Mrs. Fox?
No nominations?
Mr. O'Reilly?
No nominations.
Mr. Rossi?
No nominations.
Mr. Valentine?
No nominations.
Mr. Heverly?
No nominations. Do I have a motion to close nominations?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Okay, this is a roll call vote on Fred Bueller as a member to the Monroe Township Economic Development Commission for an unexpired term. Mrs. Adams?
Yes.
Mr. Cope?
Yes.
Mrs. Fox?
Yes.
Mr. O'Reilly?
Yes.
Mr. Rossi?
Yes.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Mr. Heverly?
Yes.
Motion carries.
I now turn this portion over to Ordinance Chair, Councilman O'Reilly.
Ordinance up this evening, we have ordinance O:03-2025, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Monroe to amend Chapter 59 of the Code of the Township of Monroe entitled Municipal Utility Authorities. This is a first reading. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next up, ordinance O:05-2025, an ordinance of the Township Council of the Township of Monroe providing for the implementation of the 5-year tax exemption and abatement law pursuant to NJSA 40A:21-1, that's Q, and approving property tax abatement between the Township of Monroe and Timothy Simpson LLC, 2675 Lakeside Drive, Block 9008, Lot 19. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain? Or nay? Or nay? I'm sorry.
Nay. No.
And that concludes ordinances for this evening. I will turn this meeting back over to Council President.
Thank you, Mr. O'Reilly. Does council have any new business to discuss? Seeing none, is there any unfinished business to discuss? Seeing none, reports and other matters? Ellie?
Okay. Mayor Wolf?
Nothing to report this evening, thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Kurz?
No report, thank you.
Solicitor, Mrs. Grace?
No report, thank you.
Business Administrator, Mr. Dehart?
Just to make sure everybody is aware, I know it was mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this is our first week of actually live streaming. We live streamed on Monday the zoning board meeting, and obviously we're live streamed today, the ordinance, and now we're on YouTube as we speak. So let's go. Everything's going well. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Director of Code Enforcement, Mr. Sebastian?
Yes, I just want to recap of the end of last year as far as our divisions were concerned. In Construction Division, this is for the month of December. The building was 234, fire 84, electrical 173, plumbing 142, mechanical 50, for a total of 683. Housing Division inspections were 252. The Zoning Division, the applications reviewed were 160. Total for the month was 1,095 inspections. The year completed for 2024, the total was 13,763 inspections. I will give the report on January at the next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Boyer?
No report, but I would like to congratulate our mayor on becoming a papa. That was what, Monday?
Monday,
Baby girl. She's beautiful.
thank you.
Deputy Police Chief McBride?
No report, thank you.
Mr. Cope?
No report. Thank you.
Mrs. Fox?
No report, thank you.
Mr. O'Reilly?
No report.
Mr. Rossi?
No report. Thank you.
Mr. Valentine?
No report. Thank you.
Council Vice President, Mrs. Adams?
No report, thank you.
Council President, Mr. Heverly?
No report this evening.
This concludes reports for this evening.
All right. Moving on to the public hearing, this is going to continue the public hearing appeal by Major Capital Improvements, increased application for a Friendly Village, continuation from our January 22nd. Mr. Hannon? What's that? Good evening.
Good evening. To refresh everyone's recollection, my name is Christopher Hanlon. I'm with the law firm of Hanlon, Neiman, and Wright. I'm here tonight representing the owners of the Friendly Village community. I was here last month to present our appeal of their denial of a part of our capital improvement increase application. It's my understanding that this matter was adjourned so that the governing body could spend more time reviewing the record, which was voluminous in this case, which we certainly didn't object to. I don't have anything else to add to my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any other questions that the board members may have now that they've reviewed the record.
I have a question for you. I don't know if you have it on you, but can you get a copy to this council of the bill invoices that were prior to, that were impossible to get it within the 18-month window?
That were outside of the 18-month window?
Correct. That was prior to, before the ordinance was passed, the list of, and the billings that was impossible for you to get to turn in time for the 18 months within that window. So you said
Okay.
the paving project
So-
happened, I believe, 24 to 3 years ago?
Yeah, I have submitted, I think, everything I submitted to the board, and the board asked my office, after they determined those were out, to identify which ones they were. So we submitted a letter on August 30th, 2024. And I'll be happy to submit it again, but you may have it. But it has a chart which highlights the bills that they exclude.
Not the
That
bills,
they-
not
that
the
they-
bills that the committee excluded, the bills that were prior to that 18-month window that was impossible for you to submit to them because it was prior to the 18th-month window. You understand what I'm saying?
Well, no. because-
You, during your hearing, you testified that there was a engineer cost.
Right.
And things like that, that were prior to this
They were-
ordinance being
yeah.
reading, and it was impossible well before the 18-month window.
Okay, I believe the only impossible invoice was the engineers, which 350,
There was no paving?
I'm sorry.
There was no early paving
It was
invoice for
no,
Phase 1?
That's correct, there was
Okay.
none. It was, the engineer was part of the paving project, but that was the only invoice that we couldn't have submitted because the ordinance didn't even exist when 18 months expired after that.
Okay,
That was it.
okay.
Do you happen to have that exhibit number on you, Mr. Hanlon?
Well, I don't think it's marked as a number. It was a letter we sent in after the second hearing.
I'm just talking specifically in regard to that engineering invoice. I know you had a packet of the invoices.
The engineering invoice, I can probably find it and tell you the Bates number. Yeah, we did Bates stamp everything. Hold on.
And Mr. Heverly, I'm assuming you're asking that question because,
But just because I have it, it's FV, we Bates stamped everything, Friendly Village. FV 27 is the exhibit number.
and what's the exact amount, sir?
I have it right here.
$600.
$600. Thank you, Mr. Hanlon. And Mr. Heverly, not to speak for you or any members of council, but it's my inclination that you'd ask that question to see what would have been impossible in order to potentially grant that amount back if it was definitely not contemplated, if the ordinance was not contemplated at that time, the invoice was incurred, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Anything else that you might be aware of, Mr. Hanlon?
I'm sorry.
Anything else that you might be aware of that would have been impossible for submission because the ordinance just wasn't even contemplated at the time?
I'd actually have to
Okay,
look at each date and do the math.
sure.
18 months out. I think the answer is that's it, but bear with me one second, because I thought we had, the ordinance was adopted 10/1.
Mr. Hanlon, FV 28 also has another amount of $750.
Okay, hold on.
That's on the same bill as the $600, just a page 2.
The only thing we included in the application for Arthur Chu was $600.
Okay,
So I think the second page may have referenced a contingent expense,
understood,
which wasn't incurred, so it wasn't included.
understood, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that.
And going back to your other question about timing, so the ordinance is adopted 9/28/23, and if we work backwards, that would be 4/1/22, April 1st, 2022. And I have the list of expenses here. I don't see any that predated that, so I'm sticking to the answer. Chu was the only expense that was impossible to
Understood.
submit.
Okay.
Anybody else have any points of clarification? So, Mr. Hanlon, if you don't mind, I understand you just did a review right now, but if you could just go back and confirm that there was nothing else?
Sure.
I don't know if you want to clarify that via email or via letter, and,
I can do that, yeah.
okay,
But I don't think it's more complicated than what I just
Sure.
said, so I think that's going to be it. But I appreciate your giving me the opportunity not to do it all while I'm on my feet. I did find another one, so I'm gonna accept your invitation.
yes,
Okay.
please. So you could send that to me via letter or via email, just in order for council to review, and I'll forward it along as well. Do any council members want to chime in as to any other invoices that or any discrepancies?
No,
Just a list of any invoices prior to that 18 months.
Right. Okay, it's easy.
All right, so what I'll ask council to do right now is just chime in on their thoughts as to the overall resolution of the application. We don't have a resolution to pass tonight, but it's my understanding that there may be some thoughts going on as to what the resolution on the February 26th meeting would be, pending your final calculations, essentially.
That'd be great.
Okay?
After-
Can I just get those pages back from my document?
The reason we asked for the 18 months, that we understand that there was cost incurred prior to this ordinance going into effect, and that timeline that we were given to you with the 18-month window to produce the invoices to get reimbursed, so you could justify the rent increases to your residents. The reason why we want prior to that is we're not trying to hurt a business. You had no idea that we were going to pass this ordinance, so we would like to see what kind of expenses your client incurred prior to that. So if we deem fit, it just makes sense that you didn't know this rent leveling. There was no way of you getting reimbursed or knowing this ordinance was going to be put in place. So we want to do the right thing and not hurt a business, so possibly make you whole with that. As far as all the other invoices that weren't put in time, and the loan in question that we talked about the last hearing, right now, in my opinion, and I think we polled council, is that we're not going to approve any more invoices. We're going to stand by what the committee.
Any other thoughts?
No.
So based on what Mr. Heverly just said, I'm just going to reiterate what was, with the understanding that it's a de novo review by this council of the Rent Leveling Board, but it seems that any invoices past the 18-month mark are not to be included, in addition to the debt service ratio from the loan that was taken out, which presently, not including any invoices that Mr. Hanlon is going to be providing us, in addition to the $600. Presently, that leaves the allotted amounts for repaving to be $450,000, $502.55. The pool renovation would remain at $66,350. Stormwater drainage would be 0 due to the 18-month window. Lighting improvements would be $7,332.30, and the shuffleboard renovation would be $0 due to the 18-month limitation. Which would still leave tentatively the total rent increase to be at $381, plus or minus a few cents probably,
Right.
based
Well,
on.
right now, it looks like it's going to be $20,600. Those are the only two I see. I'll confirm it by email. Do you also want a calculation?
Yes, please. That would be great.
Okay. Anything else?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Hanlon.
Moving on to general public discussion. Motion to open public portion.
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone wishing to speak this evening?
How you doing? Mark Kozachin, 97 Sykesville Road. Couple questions. First thing, point of order. Unless I missed it, for the open portion to speak prior to ordinances, did that happen, or is that part of the resolution also? So when someone wants to speak about wanting to propose ordinances, should they get up when, because I didn't hear the announcement, maybe I missed it. Maybe I
It was first reading, so there was no public portion,
No
correct?
public portion for ordinances?
Not for first reading.
Okay,
The public hearing is the second reading.
okay. But you will get an opportunity to speak, right? Okay, okay, very cool. Okay, so second thing, I picked up one of your little brochures you have out here in the lobby, whatever. And I noticed one of the things on here, the New Jersey Transportation Bike Trail Improvement Grant that we got for $358,000. Obviously, it's a grant, so that gets, it doesn't go in the general fund, right? It doesn't go in any general, it's specifically for bike trails. Have we spent that money? And are we going to spend that money on something?
That has not been spent, that's not been spent yet. We should be going out to bid for that soon. I don't think we put that out to bid, but the engineers are finishing up the project, so it'll be able to go out to bid in the very near future.
What project is that?
That was improvement in the bike trail. I believe that was also, I think that's the
raised
same
cross-
one, the raised walk at
crosswalk
Whispering Woods Drive.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear. The what trail?
Whispering Woods Drive, where they talked about the raised crosswalk there.
Oh, okay.
And then there's some improvements along that area of the bike trail as well.
So nothing down by where the police,
I would have to look at the whole plan. I mean, obviously, they model the plan based on how much money we got in the grant, because obviously we'll use it all for that project. So I
Okay.
don't know exactly where it's going to end up now.
okay. So when those plans become available, they'll be brought before council, or will we see them?
Yeah, we'll get it, there will be a resolution to go out to bid for it, and the plans will be part of that. It'll be a public bid.
Okay. I'm on open space, so we talk about this all the time.
Yep.
You know, one of the things that we always talk about, the trail in general, going all the way out to Glass Rose, is lighting. You know, when it gets warm out, people like to walk at night and along the trail, probably not bike, but walk, and there's no lights on that trail, so it's definitely a safety issue. There's not a lot of telephone poles, power down there, so I don't know how you would get lighting down there. I don't think solar would work, because most of it is tree covered, but it's definitely a safety issue. So I was thinking if there was money left in this grant, maybe use that to put some lights in or something, be a good idea.
Okay?
It's just it's something I've noticed, and I'll say this again, I probably said this before, the lighting at the trail as it crosses over Clayton Road by the middle school, horrible.
So that's been
It's
addressed.
so dark.
That's been addressed as well. The police department actually did a study for us. They were out, obviously they're around the clock, so they were out there and made a recommendation. We did contact ACE. Paperwork's been processed. I believe the mayor's aide actually took care of that. I believe, I don't know when it's gonna be done, but that was put through for them.
So it's gonna be light there?
Yes.
Yeah. You see it, especially like in the winter when it's dark early and kids are crossing over, you can't see them at all. They all wear the dark hoodies and everything. One other thing that I wanted to bring up, I saved the best for last. I noticed in the reorg meeting that there was not a roll call for the Director of Community Development. What happened to that position?
We didn't fill it. The individual that occupied that position resigned, and we haven't filled it.
So there's no need to have a Director of Community Development anymore? Or
We'll make that decision when we're ready.
what does that mean?
What's that?
What does that mean? I mean, I assume that if you had a director.
If we feel the need to fill it, we'll fill it. If we don't, we won't.
Okay, so we just wasted 2 years of salary on that guy?
No.
Okay. What benefit did that provide the town?
Community development,
Yeah,
there's a lot of benefits to it.
I mean, looking back through all the,
Business meetings, developers coming in, there's a lot of benefits to it.
okay,
But at
so
this
then
point, we're
that's
not-
something we need to fill, right?
Potentially. I'll make that decision.
Oh, okay. So you can just create director positions and then,
No, I don't create them. It's by ordinance.
okay. Okay, well, that was really informative, thanks.
Anyone else wishing to speak this evening? Seeing none, do I have a motion to close public portion?
Motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? As per Resolution 98-2025, we will now go into executive session, which the public is excluded.
Will we be acting on that or no?
Well, we
We're
have
not
a-
acting, but then we have.
We have a presentation
We have a lovely presentation afterwards, so we're coming back to
The
public.
only thing I can
after
do
we go
is
through.
this, right, it's just hit me.
No action
Because
either
there's
way,
no-
though.
Yeah, so I did that. And this was muted, and I thought that was this button.
So just those in the public, there will be no action
Here, that
taken
was-
from
so
this
does that stay?
closed portion. So then really, basically,
Yeah,
it's
so I had to
an
scroll down, I
adjournment when
didn't
we
see
return,
it.
so you may not want to waste
And
your
I thought
time.
it was this one, and then I was looking at it, I was like, wait, let's scroll down, so that stays.
And you always smile.
What the administrator did.
The whole thing, just the whole thing in general. I've never heard it until like about a year ago. That was our. Yours passed one. Yeah, she said that. Something like that. No worries. Yeah. It's just the whole thing is, it's actually, I think, a great idea for volunteers. Give them something. They get up in the middle of the night. It's a great idea.
You didn't know about those songs?
Maybe after tomorrow.
Surprised you didn't question it.
See? You're gonna make me ask you more questions, aren't
Okay, what do I do?
Do
You want me to
Should
wait?
you stay for this? Because this is, I don't think so. This is, this is affordable housing.
Pardon me?
We only give residential, you gotta get your Reuben period, one area in town.
You gotta get your Reuben.
Done a couple years ago. I don't get into it, if you wanna scratch it, put it on the agenda, we can scratch it, I don't wanna see
I
it.
was so busy, I didn't.
This is one back up. It's all, but I make sure that, I put rules, and you can't rent them, but he has to be.
Oh, I made a roast over the
Whoever
weekend.
buys it.
I didn't do Super Bowl.
Can't
I
force
don't-
it. Oh, exactly, so what I'm saying is,
Unless it's for my
the
grandchildren.
whole thing was put in place because the residents down there.
I did make a
council
roast.
for
Oh
my
my gosh, it was so delicious. So tender.
dilapidated stuff.
I think it in a crock pot.
John, as the ward person, wants to say I'm gonna go better than everyone. I don't think anyone on council.
Yes. Yes, so good. It is a carrot.
And I told him, but just he's like, man, I'm not in. It's all the hard stuff. Yeah, yeah.
The key is,
Not, he's qualified. He's wrong. He's wrong.
That's qualifier for.
That's right. He's wrong for this particular, I'll talk to him. It's wrong for that particular specified area of rehabilitation. We put District 4 and 5, area of rehabilitation. Specifically,
Ordering council meeting back into session. We have one more presentation. Solicitor.
Yes, good evening. Sorry, I'm opening up. Coincidentally, I do live in Monroe.
That is funny.
Not this Monroe.
Right, exactly.
I am a Monroe resident.
Which
That's
county?
not a false statement. All right, everybody has a copy of the presentation? I'm not going to read over every single slide, but I'll cover the important ones. There's a lot of just law or provisions that are in statutes that I don't want to burden everybody with, but everybody can keep the presentation and review it at a later time. Feel free to ask questions as I'm presenting or afterwards or via email as well. So first, we'll start off by talking about Robert's Rules of Orders. It's essentially a very hefty, large book, but it sets out just parliamentary rules as to how to go on about public meetings and decorum and things of the likes. It addresses the roles and responsibilities of officers, being council members or board members alike. So, and you'll note that we already do a lot of this in our council meetings, but, and these are in no way, these are in no way in the specific order that has to happen, except for the initial call to order in the beginning. But typically, you'll have a call to order, reading and approval of previous minutes, whether they be open public session minutes or executive session minutes. You'll have reports, you'll have old business, new business, and of course, adjournment. We're more sticklers, obviously, about the call to order and adjournment section, and anything in between can sort of be amended or changed order-wise along the way. In the meeting minutes that are typically kept by secretary or our wonderful clerk here, we'll have to address the kind of meeting, obviously the name of the organization, and being the Township of Monroe, date and place, presence of chairman, secretary, all applicable council members. We have to indicate also the presence of a quorum, which for this council is 4 out of 7, and the time the meeting was called to order as well. Minutes do not have to be verbatim. They're really supposed to be short, sweet, straight to the point. They don't have to put out lengthy paragraphs, especially since now we have an ordinance that allows these meetings to be not only live streamed, but recorded and viewed for later purposes. So again, the meetings are just supposed to provide brief overviews, and they're also not official until they're voted on by the governing body at subsequent meetings. You'll see there's just some different types of motions that are at play when we're in council meetings. And something that's really important, it's a distinction that's come to light over the past few years more specifically, but it's the difference between recusing and abstaining yourself from a vote or from a matter. So a recusal is typically when you're stepping aside due to a conflict of interest of some sort, whether that be personal, financial, or a familial interest. So for example, if you have a company that you're somewhat associated with that might be on the bill list, for example, you would recuse yourself from voting on the bill list if that company is getting some sort of money or getting some sort of funds from council. Now, an abstention is when you're able to vote on something, but you either don't want to, or you were not present for a meeting per se, or for that item to be able to have the information and make an informed decision on that item. So at that point, you would just abstain.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
For recusal or to abstain, religious reasons?
If
Like
that's
personal-
you don't necessarily have to state that it's a religious reason.
Okay.
For if it's something religious, though, maybe abstain.
Okay.
Because it's not a direct conflict
Okay.
as it relates to the Government
Okay.
Ethics Act.
Sandra, Claire, I have a question,
Sure.
and I don't know if you're gonna get to it, I apologize, it keeps downstream. Only you can recuse or abstain on your own? You cannot be forced by another?
So I don't want to use the word forced necessarily, but it can be recommended. So I'll often take, or, council president will take that role of essentially just keeping an eye on making sure that, for executive session minutes, for example, if somebody had a conflict and was not sitting in on executive session minutes and they accidentally voted on the executive session minutes, it's good for, all of us, but more importantly, the council president or myself, to be made aware of that and indicated on the record. And then you always have the option, for some reason you want to stand your ground and say you really were there, when we said you weren't there, to say that you're not going to recuse or abstain. Yes.
Should the person be involved in the discussions, or should they leave the?
None whatsoever. So definitely when it comes to executive session, they'd have to, if it's an executive session item, they'd have to completely leave the room and not discuss it at all. But if it's something that's part of the, just something to be voted on, they just have to state on the record that they're recusing themselves. And obviously, this goes beyond council meetings and closed sessions. If it's a point of conflict, just generally speaking, as it comes to township business, they're not to have any part of it whatsoever. And I'll have what I like to call conflict questionnaires drafted and mailed out to everybody. They're going to just be for my eyes and possibly Mr. Heverly's eyes to be able to see if anybody on council has any specific financial interest or conflicts that we need to be made aware of. So again, we can be kind of the eyes in the sky and just gentle reminders if there's anything to be voted on that we're aware of that somebody has to abstain or recuse themselves on. We discussed quorum. Meeting notices, as everybody knows by law, have to be provided 48 hours in advance to the public. Obviously, sometimes there's some last-minute revisions or changes, and there's emergency exceptions for those. When the meeting is out of order, typically it falls to the council president to make sure that everybody's back in order. If the same motion is being brought up multiple times, if debates are just not going in an orderly fashion, it's up to the council president, again, to make sure that the meeting is on track. Closed session is authorized under NJSA 10:4-12, and it's a privilege that is given to council to discuss specific matters, whether it be with myself, labor council, or amongst themselves in closed session outside of the public eye. Now, some of the matters include personnel matters in which we're going to be talking about present employees who have to be what's called riced, essentially, given notice in advance that they're going to be discussed. And at that point, with specific items as it relates to employees, it's actually their privilege that they can waive and can discuss in public session. But typically, again, those are conversations that are housed in closed session. You have collecting, yes?
I'm sorry, can I go back? It's going to be a quick question.
Sure.
Back to the quorum, real quick. Quorum is 4 out of 7 members, is it good for us?
Yes.
So we have 4, let's say we have 5 members, so we have a quorum for a meeting. Is it, when it comes to the vote, is it the simple majority of the 5?
Correct.
The total 7,
Yes.
whoever is present? So
Yes.
if 5 are here, 3 carry the.
Correct.
Okay, just want
Correct.
to make sure. 'Cause
Yep.
people get twisted up sometimes.
Yep.
I used to.
No. And that's math, so it's not always my forte, so somebody else will have to do the counting, but the general principle, yes, is it's the majority of those who are able to vote on the matter.
Okay.
And it gets a little tricky with, if we're factoring in recusals and abstentions as well,
Yeah.
but because if you have a recusal, that person technically can't vote on the matter, so they're not really even part of the 5. More commonly, you'll see that we typically resort to executive or closed session due to ongoing or pending litigation, or one of the exceptions is also if an attorney has to fulfill his or her ethical duties as township solicitor. So again, in order to provide any sort of confidential information and or advice to counsel. As goes with just general counsel business, that is, closed session is confidential. There should be no discussion about what we spoke about in closed session to, honestly, even yourselves outside of executive session. If you know the movie What Happens in Vegas, what happens in closed session stays in closed session. Some general Roberts Rule reminders. I'll leave the slides as to the role of responsibilities of council, but essentially, because we are a mayor-council form of government, you have the mayor, who's the chief executive, CEO, if you will, of the municipality, has enforcement responsibility of ordinances. Obviously, he's aided by his department heads, the business administrator, and individuals who he has appointed to enforce the policies and ordinances that are set in play by council. Now, the role of council is to be the legislative body of the municipality. Council sets forth the ordinances and the policies and regulations. Council as a whole, not council individually. And that happens right here at this table in this scene, right? It doesn't happen really. You can't vote unless you have a quorum. We have to have a quorum at a public meeting, and that's when these laws and legislations and ordinances and policies go into play. We'll move on to ethics at this point. So I'll remind you of the oath of office that each and every single one of you took in order to be sitting here as council members. You indicated that you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of New Jersey. You'll bear true faith and allegiance to same and to the governments established in the United States and in the state under the authority of the people. And you will faithfully, impartially, and justly perform all duties of council member to the best of your ability. So that continues to hold a lot of credence, right, insofar as you took an oath to abide and prolong the Constitution, again, not of just the United States, but also of the states of New Jersey. And with that comes a lot of factoring into our policies and procedures in addition to the ethics conducts that we're obligated by under state law as well. So where we really get into ethics is NJSA 40A:9-22.5, where ethical conduct is just more than merely meeting the standards required by law. There's other ethical requirements that come with being a sitting council or board member. They often refer to it as doing the right thing simply because it's the right thing to do. But it's also important here that when you take this position, you have to realize that violating those legal and ethical standards can potentially land you in hot water, where there's legal sanctions, whether those be monetary or also in terms of special performance, where you might have to forfeit your actual seat on council or for your ability to partake in the proper ethical procedures and ethical actions. So we have the Local Government Ethics Act that applies to not just elected officials such as mayors and council members, but also appointed officials such as individuals on the planning board, the zoning board, and other boards and commissions, and also all employees of local government agencies and municipalities. The DCA, the Department of Community Affairs, is the one with the jurisdiction to govern and adjudicate anything that relates to local government acts or violations. And I'll just briefly go over some of the sections from the Code of Ethics. So you'll see there's specific provisions that indicate what you really can't do, what you can have interest in, what you can't have interest in. And you have to make sure that that you don't have any employees or members of your immediate family with any business interest that are engaged with the township, or which have substantial conflict with your discharge of duties as a sitting council member. Additionally, you have to make sure that there's no public bids are, again, related to yourself, any of your family member, business entities, or anything that will essentially get you or your family members a substantial financial interest. You can't use your position or attempt to use your official position to secure unwarranted privileges or advantages, whether they be for yourself or for others. Again, you can't have any direct or indirect financial or personal involvement that might reasonably be expected to impair your objectivity or your independence of judgment. You can't take any employment or service, whether it be compensated or not, that might reasonably be expected to prejudice your independent judgment in your exercise of your official duties. So you'll see some decisions, some advisory decisions that have come out in relation to potential businesses and financial interests that were essentially marked as conflicts. In the Shapiro versus Mertz appellate division case in 2004, the court held that marriage is a direct personal involvement which might be reasonably expected to impair objectivity or independence of judgment within the meaning of the statute. So, but again, it doesn't have to be as clear or direct as marriage. We're talking whether it be yourself, that's obviously a direct conflict, but somebody you are involved with romantically, whether they be married to you or not. Again, your potential siblings, potential other family members in your cohort, or if you ever really, seen it where it's really, really close friends, right, where that's impacting your judgment as you sit there in your decision-making power as a council person. We'll move on. I'll let you read the cases, in regard to the indirect or direct financial conflicts. We'll move on to the 29th slide again, back to the Code of Ethics. F, you can't solicit yourself or any immediate family members or any business organizations in which you have an interest in it. You can't solicit or accept any gifts, favors, political contributions, service, promise, or obviously actual employment or other thing of value based on the fact that that individual or business organization is going to sway your position in your public office, whether that be lobbying for something or voting on a resolution or voting on an ordinance of any kind. Again, you can't get any financial gain out of your position, unfortunately, of being a public official, according to the Code of Ethics. All right. And most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, there are penalties, monetary penalties, and or specific disciplinary actions that can be taken upon if there's an ethics complaint filed against a council member. So the process typically is whether it be a member of a public or other sitting council members or whomever, there's an ethics complaint that gets filed and that gets adjudicated accordingly with the local finance board. Any appointed local government officer or employee guilty by the local finance board or a county or municipal ethics board of the violation of any provision in the statutes shall be fined not less than $100, but not more than $500. But that's in terms of the monetary sense, and that's not talking about actual criminal sanctions, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But the board or county or municipal ethics board shall report its finding to the office or agency having the power of removal or discipline of the appointed local government officer or employee. So again, it's not just monetary sanctions. There's potential removal, there's potential reprimands that can be in store if there's any violations of all the sections of the Ethics Act. Again, whether they be related to monetary interest or whether it be not abiding by a municipality's code of conduct that, again, we'll get into in a few, or whether it be acting outside the scope of your council member duties and oath that you've taken to abide by. All right, here we get into the criminal aspects of it, where there could be potential criminal charges if it's speculated that there's some sort of bribery, where anybody acquires a pecuniary interest in any property, transaction, or enterprise which may be affected by such information or official, or if you speculate or wager on the basis of information or official action as a sitting council member. And this also, falls, sorry, scratch that. Or if you aid another to do any of the foregoing while in office or after leaving office with the purpose of using such information. So essentially, if you as a sitting council member use information that you know to bet or speculate and gain money out of that, first of all, please don't do that. But it's also if you allow somebody else to do that, not a sitting council member, based on information that you know. It's like insider trading, basically. Don't do it. Again, bribery of any kind is not accepted. You can't gain any political favors or benefits, whether they be monetary or in the form of gifts, as consideration for a decision, opinion, your recommendation, vote, or exercise of your discretion. Official misconduct as well is an important one under NJSA 2C:30-2, where a public servant, such as a council member, is guilty of official misconduct when, with the purpose to obtain a benefit for himself or another, or to injure or to deprive another of the benefit, he commits an act relating to his office but constituting an unauthorized exercise of his official function, knowing that such act is unauthorized, or he is committing such act in an unauthorized manner, or he knowingly refrains from performing a duty which is imposed upon him by law or is clearly inherent in the nature of his office. So this one's a twofer, right? First, if you take actions outside of those that you are authorized to do as a council member. Again, if you are, and this doesn't just have to do with financial interest, but if you are taking actions with potential just employees, right, trying to potentially get documents or information that are not necessarily privy during council meetings, or something that's outside the scope of your work as a council member, something that's not necessarily on the agenda, something that nobody has really brought to your attention as a term of citizens, but you want to check on something for your house from 35 years ago, something of the likes. Again, it's a direct benefit to you or somebody that you know, but again, it's outside the scope of your work as a council member. So that's could fall under official misconduct. And now the other part of it is when you're not performing your obligations as a council member and you're intentionally doing it for the sake of some sort of benefit to you or somebody else. Refusing to vote on any and all matters at an agenda meeting for some reason. For no reason other than the fact that, maybe somebody wants to be defiant for the day, or if you're refusing to vote on something that is legally and logistically sound, but you don't want it to benefit it's not going to bring benefit to you or somebody that you know. Corruption of public resources, it's subject to obligation to be used for a specific purpose. The person knowingly uses or makes disposition of that public resource or any portion thereof for an unauthorized purposes. So again, this goes back to a little bit of the official misconduct portion, which is really stepping out of your shoes as a council member and really trying to potentially maybe hamper the promulgation of specific township exercises, maybe the way administration's handling their work or anything of the likes. Dispersing money, again, we've talked about this a few times. This is just a different definition for it and different subsection for it. But if you disperse, order, or vote for the disbursement of public money in excess of the appropriation for that office, division, department, institution, board, or body, or if you incur obligations in excess of the appropriation and limit of expenditure provided by law for that office, division, department, institution, board, or body. Say you're really tight with, and this is not a real scenario, this is just something that just popped up, right? You're really close with the library board, for example. You want to give them 2 times as much as what's allotted in the budget, and you're doing that, again, outside the scope of for no reason, outside your scope as a council member, and you're doing it to give monetary gain to that board, again, for no reason. That could be a potential violation if it's done for the wrong reasons. Obviously, if it's justified by whatever their expenses are, but by whatever we have in the budget, we'll always go back to the arbitrary and capricious standard, which I know not everybody is a huge fan of, but that's what we have to guide ourselves by. More importantly, I alluded to this earlier, under 2C 51-2, a person holding any public office, position, or employment, elective or appointive, under the government of the state, New Jersey, or any agency or political subdivision, who is convicted of an offense outlined below, shall forfeit such an office. So, if a council member, starts off being a council member, has obviously no convictions, they're a sitting council member, and something were to happen in which they ended up being convicted of a crime that's either involving dishonesty or of the crime of the 3rd degree or above under the U.S. law, they have to forfeit their position. And it's their duty to make sure that council and administration is aware of that, because obviously they're a sitting council member. Additionally, any convictions of an offense involving or touching such office, position, or employment within the municipality, and any violations that the Constitution so provides. So basically, if you're convicted with anything that is outlined in the Constitution as well. Please don't get convicted of crimes, or else we have to have further discussions. I referred to our handbook earlier. It guides not just our public employees and administration, but also local government officials, which is everybody here. It specifically discusses the expectation for conduct. I was surprised that also on page 73, it discusses the no fragrance policy, which, I'm not a huge fan of, but I'll talk to administration about that. But notwithstanding, it's some examples of inappropriate behavior is very explicitly detailed, and this list that I've provided is not just the end-all be-all. Again, I think there's several examples and several cases that we've discussed tonight that include, again, things involving money, not just convictions of crimes, but this is not an end-all be-all. So when in doubt, ask. But some inappropriate behavior, such as the neglect of duty, fighting or creating a disturbance, using obscene, abusive, or threatening language, disregarding safety or security regulations, disorderly or immoral conduct, engaging in any harassment or discrimination, theft, bribery, or unauthorized use or possession of township property, false statements, misrepresentations, or fraud, again, conviction of a crime, failure to maintain confidentiality, whether that be on items in an executive session or outside that are meant to be confidential, the use or attempted use of one's authority or official influence to control or modify political action, and rude or disrespectful conduct toward the public. So all things to consider. I believe administration sent the handbook out probably the beginning of the year. I'd be more than happy, again, to send it back out to everybody for review. Just a reminder, it doesn't just govern administration, employees, but all officials. And then last but not least, we have this financial disclosure statement. It has to be filed by April 30th or within 30 days of taking office. All right, questions, concerns? All right, I'll get those conflict questionnaires sent out, and we can discuss at the next meeting as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Sandra. April 30th. All right. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? You should have filled out two.